Hello and welcome to another security awareness video, this time on everything to do with passwords and authentication. My name is Paul Rogers and I'm a cybersecurity pro with 30 years experience as an engineer and security governance expert and content creator for this channel. In this video, I hope to answer the most common questions you've been asking on the internet about passwords, such as what makes a good one, what are the different password attacks that are causing breaches, how to store passwords, what does MFA or multi-factor authentication do, and what is the best way to secure my phone? So the video is broken into several chapters, which means that you can jump to any particular area of interest to you or view the whole video to raise your general awareness of password technology, so whatever suits your needs. So feel free to share this video with others that you think may benefit from this training, such as colleagues and friends. And also consider liking and subscribing to the channel to stay abreast of new security content notifications if you find it useful. I also encourage you to drop a comment on areas you'd like to see more videos on, such as password cracking methods, hacking groups behind the biggest hacks, biggest breaches and how they happened, or a breakdown of the cybersecurity jobs market. Just let me know with a comment. So let's get on with the presentation. This video is split up into 4 main sections designed to give you a view of each branch of password technology. In the first section on passwords, we cover the origins of passwords, the threats hackers pose to password security, the do's and don'ts of password selection, password attack types, and password technology variants including passcodes, passphrases, and passkeys. In the second section, we cover how to manage and store passwords securely with password managers, and how we also do a comparison of 5 leading password manager products which you may find useful. Then in the third section, we focus on multi-factor authentication and how it works along with its weaknesses. We also compare 5 leading MFA providers to help you choose one if you're in the market for one. And then finally, we look at mobile device security and which login methods work best for securing sensitive data. So pay attention to the chapters in the video timeline, and if you want to jump ahead at any time, you can do that. And of course, if you have any questions about any area, drop a comment below. Did you know the passwords first appeared in the 2nd century BC, or as they were referred to back then as watchwords? Back then, the Roman military used these watchwords to identify friend from foe, with soldiers often receiving the day's password on a wooden tablet from a superior officer. This system was used for both military patrols and for securing campouts for hundreds of years, and were most valuable on patrol night watches outside city gates where soldiers could recognize their comrades in the dark. Fast forward to World War I and II, where we see another military application of passwords as code words and coded messages to exchange military operational information between units and command nodes. Back then, Native Americans from at least 11 different tribes were employed by the US Army to use their native languages as a secure method of communication. Code talkers, as they were nicknamed, transmitted messages over military telephone or radio communication nets using formally or informally developed codes built upon their indigenous Native American languages. Their code was credited with some decisive victories and was never broken, unlike the German Enigma machine. Later on in the 1960s, passwords formally evolved into the modern digital era in 1961 at MIT University. That's when Professor Fernando Carbajo created passwords on a compatible time-sharing system, CTSS, to allow multiple users to have private, individual access to files on a shared mainframe computer. Then just over a decade later, in 1973, we see passwords created on the first internet system known as ARPANET by a British computer scientist called Peter Kirstein. Kirstein was incidentally famous for co-creating the TCP protocol with Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn, which was kind of important to the modern digital age, to say the least. Since 1973, there was a host of developments around passwords, including hashing, one-time passwords, and cryptography developments. Then in 2017, Apple made a big leap forward from password-only technology with the advent of facial recognition on mobile devices, namely the iPhone X. This perhaps heralded the age of passwordless login that we see today. By the way, Gloria Exercitus, which you see here on the slide, means glory to the army. It's a saying that was often used between soldiers and appeared on Roman coins around 330 AD. Let's start here with a quick question to test your knowledge on passwords. It's okay if you don't know on the first guess, but by the end of this section, I hope you'll understand why the correct answer is C. In 2025, it's safe to say that most systems which use only passwords of average strength are no match for a determined hacker using password cracking tools, and a good graphics card or one of the many cloud-based cracking services like CrackStation and GoCrack. The truth is that modern password cracking tools enabled by AI-powered smart guessing algorithms have made fast work of learning human behavior and how we create passwords. These algorithms work by calculating the frequency of various character combinations across millions of sample passwords, ranging first from the most common combinations and down to the rarest ones. According to the cybersecurity firm Kapersky, we rarely choose truly random passwords, and our attempts at generating them pale in comparison to machines. We rely on common phrases, dates, names, street addresses, and patterns, precisely what smart cracking algorithms are designed to exploit. Moreover, the human brain is such that if you ask a sample of folks to pick a number between 1 and 100, most will choose the same numbers. The YouTube channel Veritasium surveyed more than 200,000 people and found that the most popular numbers chosen to be 7, 37, 42, 69, 73, and 77. So to further compound the problem with passwords, users tend to reuse the same passwords out of convenience across multiple applications and websites. Of course, hackers realize this as a common behavior and capitalize on it when cracking in to any account linked to you. Of course, cracking passwords is only one part of the problem, as there are other threats like social engineering, which we'll cover shortly. What you see here on the screen is some of the hacking methods a major crime group called Scattered Spider uses to hack businesses around the globe today. Scattered Spider is ranked as one of the most dangerous and active cybercrime gangs in the world at the moment and is linked to more than 100 targeted attacks across industries such as telecoms, finance, retail, and gaming. They've been linked to some high-profile ransomware attacks on Caesars Palace and MGM Resorts in Las Vegas, and Marks & Spencer, Harrods, Jaguar Land Rover, and the Co-op in the UK. The group is one of a number of cyber gangs which are considered new age and comprised of mostly English-speaking teenage attackers. What's notable about this crime group is that they use more sophisticated attacks and a wider variety of tools than others. The gang relies heavily on social engineering attacks, weak passwords, fake web domains, and SIM swapping techniques to bypass security controls and inject ransomware into organizations. Some known techniques they have used include posing as employees to gain access to computer rooms, using fake credentials gleaned from a LinkedIn profile, and other methods include duping employees to share their credentials over the phone by posing as tech support professionals, and using phishing emails which were opened, which allowed employees with weak system passwords to be hacked on the network. The last issue of weak passwords is probably the most preventable one, and is the one we're going to address in this presentation while showing you the options available to combat growing threats. In this slide, we're going to address the common question of what makes a strong password, i.e. the do's and don'ts. So on the column on the left, we're looking at the most current bad password practices based on research by security firms like NordPass. They advise that users should not use password, pass, secret, admin, login, or any term that relates to a password or default login name like admin or administrator. The same goes for colloquial password terms like let me in, open sesame, welcome, and others. Next, avoid number, alphabet, or keyboard sequences like ABCD, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 1, 1, or QWERTY anywhere in the password. So pass 1, 2, 3, 4 or secret 1, 1, 1, 1 would be examples of this. Then they advise not to use names, birthdays, years, or place names. This is because password hacking tools will start with lists of this type of information in an effort to guess your password. Then the advice tells us not to use any animal names, storybook type characters, sports team names, or pop group or idol names in the password, as again password cracking tools and hackers will use this information first in various types of attacks which we'll cover in the next slide. So then moving over to the do's column to the right, we see some password quality recommendations from government agencies like NIST and from Microsoft. So to answer a common question, how long should a password be? Well, the advice here is that the password should not be less than 16 characters. This used to be 12, but is not considered strong enough anymore. The complexity of the password is key. So passwords with a combination of uppercase and lowercase characters with numbers and symbols makes them difficult to crack even with automated cracking tools. The next piece of advice is to answer the question, is it safe to reuse passwords? And of course, the answer to that is no. It's not safe to reuse the same or similar passwords on your accounts. This goes for all your work and personal accounts, plus any Wi-Fi passwords, email accounts, and anything else. Using the same password on your accounts makes the job easier for hackers if they breach just one of your accounts. Microsoft advises not to use any words found in the dictionary, people's names, character names, product names, or organization names, as they are all likely to be included in password lists which hackers use. I know at this point that this can seem a bit overwhelming to remember when creating your password, which is why there are certain techniques that make things easier, such as using passphrases and password generation tools, which we'll discuss in upcoming slides. I would highly recommend investing in a password manager, which most importantly includes password generator functionality. The security company NordPass stated that in 2024, the average person has 168 personal passwords and 87 business passwords, totaling a whopping 255 accounts on average. You can see how problems could arise trying to manually set and update unique passwords for all of these. It's worth mentioning here that this list of do's and don'ts is not exhaustive. There are many other important considerations, particularly in corporate environments when it comes to work passwords, such as password rotation, lockout and history policies in Windows and Unix environments. But you can subscribe to this channel to get notified on upcoming corporate best practice training for these type of advice, or drop your contact email in the description so you get notified of any videos relating to this. So before I cover the most common password attack methods, if I could ask you to consider subscribing to this channel. Your support allows me to continue creating and publishing free content like this regularly to help those interested in learning about cybersecurity. And of course, if you'd like to discuss your training needs in the area of cybersecurity, a link for that is in the description. So now back to the presentation. Here are 6 well-known password attack methods, starting with brute force. What is a brute force attack? Well, simply put, it's an automated attack method on passwords and encryption keys using different combinations of characters until the correct combination is found. It uses tools like John the Ripper, AirCrackNG, and LoftCrack, which attack password hash files found in operating system folders on Windows and Unix machines. This type of tool takes lots of processing power but can be accelerated by multiple graphics cards and online dedicated cloud services to crack passwords quickly, particularly ones with 8 characters or less. In practice, hackers may often copy a Windows SAM database or a ntds.dit file and use an offline tool to crack passwords on the local machine. Hackers will pay particular attention to any user accounts with administrative privileges, as this allows them to install malware and connect into other machines such as important servers. A password hash, by the way, is a one-way encrypted version of a password that is stored in a database instead of a plain text password. This process uses a cryptographic function to transform a password into a unique fixed length string of characters that cannot be reversed. So it's basically a way of systems avoiding storing passwords in plain text, which would obviously make them vulnerable to hackers. So in the second form of attack, a dictionary attack, it's a type of attack where a tool like John the Ripper again will use a list of common passwords, dictionary words, or work from lists of compromised credentials from the dark web to test against account logins. This is relatively fast form of attack, as it's working from known lists which are loaded into the app and are processed quickly. So then next on our list of attacks is rainbow tables. What are rainbow tables? Well, they are essentially lists of pre-computed tables of hash values and their matching plain text passwords. So if the hash can be looked up in a rainbow table, the plain text version will be revealed. Typical tools like Rainbow Crack, John the Ripper, and Brutus can be used for this process. This form of attack used to be more common, but has been defeated most of the time with the addition of salting of hashes. Salting is a security measure that adds a unique random string of characters, a salt if you want to say, to each password before it's hashed. This ensures that even if two users have the same password, the resulting hashes will be different. If you want to learn more about the technical details of all of this, there is a downloadable link to a downloadable document with external references for this slide in the description. So in the next form of attack, credential stuffing, it's a technique used by hackers to reuse a user's stolen credentials on other accounts that may be linked to them. Hackers are well aware that users tend to use the same passwords across many accounts. This might look like a user using the same password for logging into their Netflix and Amazon Prime accounts. So if a list of Netflix user accounts and passwords were leaked on the dark web, a hacker may look for other accounts linked to that user or users that they may be interested in and try a similar username with the same password on Amazon. This is a very common attack method. So next on our list is password spraying, or as it's called, reverse brute force attack. It involves an attacker trying a single commonly occurring password against a large list of usernames to find a match. This, of course, is the opposite of a normal brute force attack, which tries many passwords against a single username. Usually attackers will leverage passwords discovered in large data breaches and test them against a list of users in a company database at a low frequency level to avoid an account lockout. Hence they are difficult to detect. So sticking on this point of account lockout, after covering 5 attack methods so far, it's always advisable to set an aggressive account lockout policy on your device. So 3 attempts would be an appropriate setting here before an account lockout would occur. For very sensitive systems, a call to support staff may be required to unlock the account, similar to a banking app which would require you to call into customer service. So the last attack method has become the go-to method for cybercriminal gangs to get employee passwords and banking credentials quickly. This, of course, is social engineering. Social engineering, as you know, uses psychological tactics to manipulate people into taking a desired action, like giving up confidential information such as passwords and PINs. It can be conducted by email, social media, phone, or in person, and is now increasingly facilitated by AI technologies to make these attacks more realistic and deceptive. The security firm Proofpoint estimates that social engineering may account for 98% of cyber attacks, while other sources place it between 70 and 90%. Whichever statistic you believe, it's a critical issue in cybersecurity. There are a few other attack methods that I could cover here, such as keyloggers, man-in-the-middle attacks, mass password attacks, Kerber roasting, which I may include an upcoming video on password cracking methods in a more of a deep dive on these types of attacks. Let me know if you'd like to see more an informational video about other attacks. If you want to go ahead and comment in the description, and of course subscribe to the channel so you get notified when the new video drops. I would recommend some of our other videos on phishing, for which there are links at the end of the video, where we cover many attack types and methodologies under the social engineering banner. So it's a fact that most people and companies are not aware when and how often their passwords are breached and end up for sale on the dark web. It's known that more than 24 billion credentials are exposed each year in data breaches, and about half of the affected parties use the same password 14 times. Cyber experts are attributing the rise of infostealer malware such as Luma C2 to the dramatic rise in credential theft, which can be delivered through phishing emails, malicious sites, and software downloads. So how do you check if your password has been hacked and get notified about future hacks? Well, let's start with some free tools you can start using straight away, the first of which is Google Password Checkup. This one is simple and involves visiting passwords.google.com/checkup/start and logging into your Google account to check if it's been involved in any data breaches. The tool will then check your Chrome browser for stored credentials to compare with Google's security databases and generate a detailed report with compromised passwords. It will also tell you about reused passwords and weak passwords, which is a handy preventative feature designed to limit your exposure to future breaches. The next free tool is Have I Been Pawned, which will give you a report on data breaches since 2012 in instances where your email address and password were found in a data breach. So in my case, I noticed LinkedIn, Adobe, Dropbox, Twitter, and a few companies I didn't even know about, which were included in data breaches, including People Data Labs, PDL, and the Post Millennial. This shows us the lack of control we really have over security once we create a login anywhere online. Then the next tool comes from Mozilla, which is also free. It provides many of the same results as Have I Been Pawned, but it has a nice step-by-step remediation tool which takes you through all the remediation steps that you need. I'd recommend using all three tools and making a physical note of accounts you've fixed as you go along so you don't duplicate effort. Next we move into the paid tools category, starting with McAfee. McAfee Identity Monitoring is more of a personal tool to notify you of more types of threats. From its own website, it says, "We'll monitor the dark web for your personal info, including email, government IDs, credit cards, and bank account numbers, and more." It also says, "We'll help keep your personal info safe with early alerts if your data is found in the dark web, an average of 10 months ahead of similar services." The full list of data that it monitors includes social security numbers or government IDs, driver's license numbers, passport numbers, tax IDs, dates of birth, credit card numbers, bank account numbers, usernames, insurance ID cards, email addresses, and phone numbers. They have 3 different plans which you can view on the link provided on the screen. So then last on our list is an enterprise product which some of my business viewers might be interested in. The product comes from a company called Recorded Future, and the name of the product is Dark Web Intelligence. So their platform describes their product as a solution which enables you to automate the identification of proprietary data or lost credentials on dark marketplaces, as well as mentions of your company, brands, or infrastructure. It also allows companies to uncover new and emerging exploits and malcode tools relevant to your technology stack being developed and traded in dark web locations. One source on the web says threat intelligence costs for two users is roughly $281,000 over a 3-year period license, I guess. So this would place the product obviously in the high-end enterprise bracket. So obviously plan accordingly if you're in the market for something like that. A common question about passwords is what's the difference between them and passcodes, and which one is better? Well, the answer to the first part of the question about the difference between the two is that passcodes are typically short numeric codes often used in banking apps or for fast access to a device, such as you might see when unlocking your phone or unlocking a screensaver. A password, on the other hand, is usually longer with a more complex string of characters, numbers, special characters, which are used to log into operating systems, online accounts, apps, as we've seen in previous slides. Passwords are more secure due to your complexity and ability to set policies for, whereas passcodes are convenient but less secure when they're used on their own without any other form of authentication. So it's quite common to see passcodes used as a secondary form of authentication after first being verified through another means. So what does that look like? Well, if you've ever signed up for an online banking on your phone, you will first enroll your phone once with the registration number, perhaps your account details, password, and a user-generated passcode. And then every time after that, you access your account details through your banking app just with the passcode on its own for speed of use. So another common question is, how do I make my passwords more secure? Well, a common method is through the use of passphrases, which are made up of unrelated words but are easily memorable to the user. A passphrase example like railway, sky, Venus, mountain is easy to remember and is actually 26 characters long, and therefore considered strong as they are a lot harder to guess when compared to normal passwords, which are crackable on average within an hour using cracking tools like John the Ripper. A statistic actually out there is that most normal passwords are cracked 59% of the time within just an hour. So passphrases can be further enhanced with pins and biometrics like Apple's Face ID and thumbprint identification, as seen quite commonly used in banking apps and in crypto wallets, making them extremely strong. While passphrases are superior to passwords, there are a few potential weaknesses to be aware of. Like passphrases have many of the same vulnerabilities as passwords do, as they are vulnerable to social engineering and insecure storage practices. This means that users may be duped into sharing their password with fake websites and hackers who may trick you into believing they're legitimate. So passphrases on their own are vulnerable to the same data breaches as regular passwords when dumps of breached credentials appear on lists on the dark web. Users may also make the mistake of reusing the same passphrase across multiple accounts and use predictable phrases like the lyrics of a song. And then lastly, passphrases can sometimes cause annoyance to users who have to type them in, particularly on devices like TVs, where remote controls may be used to type them out. This can lead to users rejecting their use and opting for short passwords for speed instead. The second method for securing your password is through the use of passkeys. Passkeys are big tech's answer to passwordless login. You might have noticed them being used by Google, Amazon, eBay, Revolut, and other big techs. They are designed to help prevent phishing and the problem of sharing the same password across multiple web apps and services. They work by using a one-time enrollment process where users use their face, thumbprint, pattern or PIN to link a device to a service such as Google Password Manager. Once this is done, users can entirely avoid using a typed password to access Google services from then on. Passkeys have the advantage of being faster than typing a password, more secure in that they are resistant to password guessing. They prevent password reuse and provide protection against phishing attacks. So in a phishing attack, a user unintentionally enters their real password on a deceptive website usually created by a cybercriminal. This doesn't work with passkeys. The keys we mentioned earlier only work on the URL of the real app or website. So this prevents phishing. Then there's the fact that passkeys are stored locally on your device, which means that unlike your password, which may get hacked in a big data breach or on a server you probably never heard of, passkeys are stored on your local device, which is a much smaller target for hackers. Passkeys are not invulnerable though, as concerns have been raised about the difficulty in implementing them in organizations and the fact that the underlying protocol called WebAuthn, W-E-B-A-U-T-H-N, on which passkeys are based is inherently very insecure. So for those companies who are willing to make the move away from passwords, passkeys are much more secure than user-generated passwords and expect them to be rolled out more and more as they move towards a passwordless login environment on the internet. Another question that comes up frequently is, are password recovery questions a secure method of authentication? Well, the short answer is no, but you may still encounter them on websites that are used, but mostly as a legacy feature. The fact is that many times these answers, these password recovery answers, can be discovered through social media searches, public record searches, and even social engineering. The preferred method of recovery is through password reset emails with an embedded tokenized link and a short expiration timeout. Many companies such as Google and Microsoft will add a second layer of authentication on top of these recovery emails through the use of a one-time password generated by an authenticator app to further secure the process. So in effect, it's a form of two-factor authentication that you will see out there quite a lot in the password recovery efforts, particularly by big companies like Microsoft. So just quickly on this slide, the main cybersecurity questions for 2025 circling around the internet fell into 4 categories this year. Those categories were A, AI-powered attacks, B, quantum computing threats, C, supply chain vulnerabilities, and D, ransomware as a service. So with data breaches in the US now costing companies an average $10.22 million and the global cost of ransomware projected to hit $57 billion by the end of 2025, you may be interested to hear more on one or more about the latest forms of threats. That's why I encourage you to drop a comment below with your choice or choices of topics and subscribe to the channel to get notified when the next video is published about one of these categories. Remember, we can also create awareness presentations for corporate customers on any of these topics. So again, let me know in the comment section if any of these may be of interest to you. In this slide, we answered the question, how should I store my passwords? Well, the best answer to that question is probably with the use of password managers. Password managers are programs that allow you to store account passwords and other personal information such as credit card numbers, addresses, phone numbers, and secure notes in encrypted form. This data is stored in a password vault, either locally or in the cloud, and is typically accessed with the master password authenticator app, or biometric data like a facial scan or a fingerprint for strong security. So beyond the peace of mind that comes with having all your passwords stored securely, password managers will autofill your login information on websites they recognize, allowing you to access all your accounts seamlessly. So why do you need a password manager? Well, according to Microsoft, many people use weak passwords that are easily guessed and reused on several different websites, making them targets for hacking and identity theft. When you use the same password for any of your email, bank, social media, or healthcare accounts, an identity thief who may have found just one of your login information on the dark web would be able to test the same password against any other accounts they may discover on a list or by searching on Google. So what are some other benefits of a password manager? Well, password managers let you create strong, unique passwords for you for each of your accounts and let those passwords be automatically filled in when you go to use them. Using the autofill feature for each site you have an account with saves you time. Password managers also protect your identity by checking dark web sites for stolen credentials and email addresses. So the sad fact is that millions of online users have their passwords, email addresses, and more stolen every year due to companies being breached and never being informed about it. Password managers will alert users if their details show up in online dark marketplaces and alert them to change them immediately and check with credit reporting service providers to check for fraud. Password managers can also let you know about phishing sites. So passwords stored in a password manager vault are matched to a specific URL when first created. So if you land on a cloned phishing site such as a fake banking site, the credentials won't work and you'll get an alert, thus keeping your personal information safe from criminals who are trying to steal your personal information. So with so many of us using hundreds of personal and work accounts and the need to keep passwords unique and strong, password managers fill an essential gap and give you peace of mind. In the next slide, we'll look at 5 popular password managers and what they can offer. So in this section, I'm going to compare some top password managers ranked by names such as by Gartner, PC Mag, and a few other ratings agencies. I feel this is an important exercise as password protection gives you perhaps the best bang for buck defense against hackers, and you get to see some of the other benefits which you might not have thought of. I'm also going to include a link in the description with further information on each of the brands mentioned here, as there are a lot of extra information to share if you want to dive deeper into getting one of these products yourself. And remember, if you'd like to see a video just about password managers and their features, comment below and say, yes, I'd like to see a video on password managers, and I'll line something up. So in this chart we looked at 10 areas for each of the password managers mentioned in the previous slide, which were LastPass, Dashlane, Keeper, 1Password, and Bitwarden. Each of these names are well-established players in the field and compete closely with each other on password features, with slight variations on free versus paid elements and what each product is known to specialize in. So you'll notice that there are annotations with asterisks such as asterisk 1, asterisk 2, etc. in various locations. These annotations link to the information beneath the chart. So for example, you see asterisk 1 beside LastPass, which links to the notation at the bottom, best known for ease of use by Consumer Reports. However, they suffered a data breach in 2022 which eroded customer trust. And then asterisk 2 is for Dashlane, which is in quotes considered best known for security features and so on. So what I recommend is that you pause the video at any point to read the notes, to read over everything, and I'll weigh in with my opinion based on all the expert reviews. As I mentioned in the previous slide, I'm going to include a link in the description with more information, including pricing on each of these features, as there's a bit of depth here in explaining each one. I'll start with ruling out the ones that would be no for me and why. So let's go ahead then with the review. Firstly, LastPass is a good product, but clearly having suffered a large data breach in 2022, which exposed the data on 33 million individual users and 100,000 businesses, and also the fact that they had to revise their story on what the actual compromise was, means that the product really is a non-starter for me. Then Dashlane gets 3 dings against it based on price, having an awkward emergency access procedure, and then no secure notes on mobile devices, which I believe is important. Emergency access is a feature in password managers that allows a trusted contact, such as your spouse, to gain access to your password vault in case of emergencies, such as death or incapacitation, which obviously can be very important should the worst happen. While secure notes are encrypted digital notes stored within a password manager designed to hold sensitive information that doesn't fit in a standard password field. They protect data like software licenses, pins, security question answers, and account numbers, keeping it safe and organized along with other credentials. The next product I would say no to is Bitwarden, due to a lack of important functionality in the dark web monitoring department. As you'll remember from previous slides, this feature allows monitoring of dark websites for lists of breached passwords and email addresses which may be for sale. So having live alerting of a breach is of critical importance, so you can respond by changing your account passwords. This leaves us with Keeper and 1Password, which are closely matched. However, as 1Password does not have email breach monitoring as part of its offering, which I think makes that a significant flaw. This leaves us with Keeper, which would make my recommendation given its all-round feature set and competitive pricing. Of course, if you have your opinion on these products or others, or feel that there's another password manager that is better than any of these, drop a comment below with your experience. So up to now, we've mostly covered single-factor authentication methods, namely passwords, passphrases, and passkeys. Now it's time to discuss MFA, or multi-factor authentication as it stands for. So what is multi-factor authentication? Well, it's a general term for login security which involves 2 or more authentication methods which are needed to gain access to a system. The method can be used for something you know, something you have, or something you are. So let's explain what that looks like. So let's say you want to log into your workplace from home. Well, with multi-factor authentication, you will probably first connect via an app on your device, like using Cisco Secure Client or Checkpoint Secure Remote Access or something like that, which will prompt you first to enter a username and a password. And then secondly, it will look for something else like a code from a text message, a one-time password from an authenticator app, or hardware token. So in this scenario, the username and password is something you know, and the device used to receive or generate the code is something you have, which constitutes multi-factor authentication. This second form of authentication effectively means that even if your username and password are leaked out onto the dark web, or a hacker has managed to place malware onto your machine with the intention of stealing your credentials, that these attacks will probably fail. So there are a range of corporate and personal MFA products which are popular in this space. A few common free ones are phone authenticator apps like Google Authenticator and Microsoft Authenticator, which generate a new code every 60 seconds. Then we have other types of MFA technology, including physical key fobs and hardware keys which plug into USB ports on mobile devices. We then also have voice-based authentication, which is offered through services like Microsoft Entra ID, where users are validated through an automated phone attendant, which makes an outbound call to the user for verification. In the next 2 slides, I'll show you some weaknesses in the technology and a comparison chart of 5 top MFA providers and their feature sets. So let's look at some MFA weaknesses. So MFA technology is not 100% foolproof. So let's look at some 5 known common weaknesses through its use. The first one I want to talk about is SIM swapping. So what is that? SIM swapping is a type of fraud where a hacker tricks a mobile carrier into transferring a victim's phone number to a new SIM card that the hacker controls. So if the hacker succeeds, it allows them to intercept one-time passwords and other authentication codes via SMS, thereby bypassing multi-factor authentication and gaining unauthorized access to the victim's work account logins or banking apps, email, or cryptocurrency wallets. Some hackers will go one step further by performing account takeovers, where they use these codes to reset passwords and take over the victim's account, causing significant harm to individuals and businesses. Second on our list is social engineering, which may involve different techniques to deceive users into taking an action to allow hackers to bypass multi-factor authentication. Two commonly used methods are called prompt bombing and service desk attacks. Prompt bombing is an attack method where attackers will send out repeated requests to a victim's phone asking them to approve a login until the victim gives in and approves the login out of annoyance. Attackers will usually already have the victim's login and password before attempting this maneuver, and attackers may spoof where the request for authentication came from to make it look like their employer, bank, or other trusted party initiated it. In the case of service desk attacks, hackers may call a corporate help desk using a ruse that they're an employee who's lost their phone or can't access their authenticator app and need a code to access their work or banking app. Normally the hacker will have sufficient identity information on the victim to convince the help desk that they are in fact who they say they are. These tactics have been linked to cybercrime groups like Scattered Spider and Octopus. Specifically, the attack on MGM Grand, which we mentioned earlier in the video, used a service desk attack to gain access to their network. If you want to hear more about these two groups and their history of attacks and methods, drop a comment below and I'll include them in an upcoming video. So then number 3 on our list is an adversary in the middle attack, sometimes referred to as man-in-the-middle attacks. So in this case, users may land on a lookalike banking website, fake login screen, or a fake social media site after clicking on a phishing link or downloading malware. At this point, unsuspecting users may be duped into entering in their two-factor codes for authentication, believing the app or website to be legitimate. Meanwhile, hackers are waiting and deploy a method called 2FA or two-factor authentication pass-on to simultaneously use these codes to authenticate on the real site, thereby defeating the multi-factor challenge. Again, once they're into your account, they can take it over, change passwords, drain funds, etc., leaving the victim not suspecting they've done anything wrong. An example of this tactic has been used by e-crime groups such as Storm 1167, who are known for crafting fake Microsoft authentication pages to harvest credentials where they mimic the MFA step of the Microsoft login process, prompting the victim to put in their MFA code and grant the attacker access. From there, they gain access to a legitimate email account and can use it as a platform for a multi-stage phishing attack. So then number 4 is session hijacking, which involves taking over active user accounts through stolen cookies or API tokens, allowing them to impersonate legitimate users, access sensitive systems, and execute ransomware attacks, all while flying under the radar of traditional security tools. So how does it work? An attacker uses eavesdropping to monitor legitimate user sessions, such as a connection to a banking site or an employee VPN session into their work environment. The attacker then uses malware or cross-site scripting to steal that cookie or token stored in the victim's machine, thereby bypassing MFA and impersonating the legitimate user in their active session, effectively taking over their account. As you can see perhaps why at this point that hacking groups are difficult to defend against, as they seemingly have a sophisticated array of tools to overcome even the most secure technologies. Then lastly, number 5 on our list is the next weakness, which is user lockouts. This refers to instances where users find themselves in a situation where they can't access their authenticator app, they can't receive a phone signal or for push notifications, or experience a lockout due to excessive failed code entry attempts. So even lockouts due to non-compliant devices can cause lockout in devices. These issues can lead to rejection of using MFA in the first place, and in some cases disabling it out of frustration. So this slide we're showing you a multi-factor authentication product comparison. So see, these are 5 top multi-factor authentication products and how they compare, so that if you're in the market for buying one of these products, you can make an informed decision. So starting from our first row, we look at a cost comparison of Cisco Duo, Okta Adaptive, Microsoft Entra, Ping Identity, and Google Authenticator. Google is actually free, so it rates top in the cost department. This is then followed by Duo at $3 per user per month, then Microsoft Entra at $6 per user per month, and Adaptive at $17 per user per month. Bottom of the cost list is Ping Identity with a high entry point at $20,000 per year. On the next row, we look at the primary usage for each of these five products. We see that Duo is most suited to quick deployments in small and medium-sized businesses. Okta is best geared towards non-Microsoft multi-app environments, while Microsoft Entra is, as you would expect, heavily Microsoft/Azure-centric with deep integrations into their own Microsoft applications. Then looking at Ping Identity, we see that it's targeting large, complex enterprise class of business, hence explaining the $20,000 entry price perhaps. And then last on this row is Google Authenticator, which is really only designed as a personal use product commonly used as an app on cell phones without any form of centralized management. And now looking at the last row, we reviewed the key weaknesses of each product, starting from Cisco Duo. The main weakness here is that it's not quite fit for large, complex environments, yet it's evolving as time goes on. The low monthly price here is perhaps reflective of this fact. Next we look at Okta. Okta can come in on the expensive side at scale, as we see that $17 per seat per month can rack up quickly in expense in larger environments. Next, Microsoft Entra, which has a main weakness of not being suitable outside of Microsoft shops. So really you could say that it's really only designed for Microsoft Azure environments. Now looking at Ping Identity, the main technical drawback here is the complexity of the product, leading to a steep learning curve for product owners. This of course is not uncommon with enterprise solutions, as they're designed to tackle complex, nuanced problems. And then lastly on our categorization here is Google. Although it's a free product, it lacks advanced features like adaptive policies and end-to-end encryption. So just on a side note on adaptive policies and what they are, they're essentially dynamic rules that adjust the level of multi-factor authentication required for a login based on real-time risk assessments of factors like location, device, and user behavior. So instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, adaptive policies balance strong security with user convenience by requiring fewer steps for low-risk logins like from a trusted device and location, and stepping up the authentication requirements for high-risk situations such as a login from an unfamiliar device or location. In this slide we ask the question, how do I secure my mobile device? Well, mobile devices continue to be a favorite amongst hackers in 2025 as more users browse with their phones and tablets than desktops, so security on these devices is just as important than anything else, which is why it's good to know what the best forms of security are. Well, basically there are 5 common methods of security on mobile devices, 2 of which are considered very secure from a login perspective. The 5 common methods include passcodes, pattern recognition, passwords, biometric security, and hardware security keys. The first 3 of these are considered not to be that secure on the security front, as malware and nearby threat actors can observe you while you enter your credentials. In other words, passcodes, patterns, and passwords can be defeated by activities such as brute force attacks, shoulder surfing, social engineering, and phishing websites, which are all in the business of stealing credentials through the easiest method possible. which leaves us then with the two other options for security, biometrics and hardware security keys, which are both considered much stronger because they rely on physical components to make them work. So you may well be familiar with Apple's Face ID and Touch ID, or on the Android platform, Android's Face Unlock and Fingerprint Unlock features. These are prime examples of physical uniqueness because they estimate that the chances of another random person unlocking the device is less than 1 in 1 million. Apple's Face ID has a very high degree of security in that it performs a liveness check, which ensures a real live person is authenticating to the device. It uses a sophisticated 3D system to create a mathematical representation of your face, which is encrypted and protected within the phone's secure enclave, as it's known, meaning your facial data is not shared or stored on Apple's servers for privacy reasons. Android also supports Face Unlock and fingerprint authentication, which can supersede the need for patterns, pins, and passwords on that platform for authentication. But perhaps the most powerful authentication method, however, is a hardware security key, which can either plug into the device's physical charging port or connect via near-field communication or Bluetooth. Hardware keys have the advantage of being highly resistant to phishing and other social engineering attacks because they require a physical presence and interaction with the device. Examples of mobile compatible keys include Yubico from YubiKey and Google's Titan security key. These devices may be used for the physical device login and many web app authentications that support them. They are also not limited to mobiles, as they also work with PCs and laptops. Hardware keys are often used as a good option for protecting devices holding highly sensitive data or government data, which may be particularly of interest to hackers. Of course, passwords are only part of the picture with protecting mobile devices, particularly corporate assets which may hold sensitive data and provide a way into the corporate network if they're not properly secured. To get a deeper view of corporate mobile security best practice for your staff, subscribe to the channel to get notified for an upcoming awareness video on the topic, or drop a comment with your email in the bottom of this video to get notified. So let's have a quick test of your knowledge. The question here is, which is better security for a mobile device? Choose two of the options. So the answer on this slide is B and C, as they rely on physical elements, i.e. a facial scan and a physical key that you must plug in. With regards to question A, or answer A rather, while 12-character complex passwords are strong, they're still vulnerable to malware on your device, such as keyloggers, which hackers can use to track your keystrokes in the background. Option D, complex login pattern, is weaker as well, as it's vulnerable to shoulder surfing and video surveillance, which may pick up your thumb movements without your knowledge. There's also an increased risk that you'll forget the pattern and lock yourself out permanently from the device. So on this slide, I'm showing you a quick guide on how to protect and manage your passwords on all your devices. The most important things to pay attention to on this slide is to use at least 16 characters if you're using passwords, but consider switching to long passphrases, which are more practical to remember and harder to crack. The fact is these days that the computational power hackers have at their disposal in cracking passwords is immense, and that 59% of passwords are cracked in under an hour, according to the security firm Kapersky. So for your online accounts, I highly recommend password managers. You can see my pick from password managers section of the video. Although passwords and passphrases can be strong, they're not as good as multi-factor authentication and biometrics. So take the time to enable MFA whenever it's an option and when using your phone. Don't rely on passcodes or screen pattern logins. Use face recognition or fingerprint identification. So just quickly here, just to remind you that we have other training videos on our channel, like the ones you see here on this slide, on cybersecurity awareness, phishing, data privacy, and many other topics. We also have a design service for training content And lastly, you can join our waitlist for upcoming LMS type training for staff on our site at data-privacy.io/waitlist. So this is our LMS type training, which is offered for organizations wanting to conduct more formal modular training for employees with the enrollment, tracking features, certificates, etc. You'll also find links for these and free bonus reference resources for this video in the description, which you may find useful. Well, this brings us to a close on our password security awareness presentation. I hope you've learned a thing or two that you will find useful for your own devices. And remember to subscribe to the channel, and if you're looking for the full corporate LMS version of this training, use the link data-privacy.io/waitlist. The link is there on the screen to get notified when it's published. There are links, of course, below the video for different free resources and other links to other training. And I thank you for watching, and I'll hope to see you again in the next training video. Thanks for watching.